Hello and welcome to Life Extension Live. I'm Dr. Mike and I'm here with my co-host, as always, Dr. Crystal Gossert. And today we're going to talk about thyroid health. Now, Dr. Crystal, we've talked about the thyroid before, but we did it more about labs and
Right.
how to measure thyroid function and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of good information I think we did a podcast on that as well. It wasn't just a
Yes,
live
we did.
show.
Yes, a live
Um,
and a podcast.
so you could go to liveforeverish.com and search for that thyroid one. But what we wanted to talk about today, are real solutions for people who are dealing with thyroid issues. And of course, the number one issue people deal with is low thyroid.
Right.
So we're going to talk mostly about low or what we call hypothyroidism. But let's take a step back first.
Mm-hmm.
And Dr. Crystal, can you give us a nice summary of why the thyroid gland is so important and what does it really do for us?
The thyroid gland is often called the metabolic throttle. So people often think of it as kind of the thermostat in the body. It's what's controlling energy metabolism. And I don't think that people often think about the downstream effects of that. What does that really mean when we say your metabolic throttle? Dr. Mike, I had trouble getting that one out. And so what does that really mean? And what that means is the thyroid hormones are controlling how the body processes and releases energy from your nutrients. I
Yeah.
mean, that the thyroid, your cells cannot properly take in the nutrients. They can't receive the right amounts of oxygen. The cells can't manage waste efficiently. So in order for your cells to work, you need thyroid hormones.
Yeah.
So when we
Yeah.
talk about it being that throttle, yes, I think we can understand now the trickle down effect and why thyroid function is so far reaching.
So it's like for me, the analogy for me is driving a car, right?
I
Like,
love your analogies. Let's hear this
well,
one,
right,
everyone.
I like cars with some big fast engines. I do. I like to step on when I hit that throttle, that accelerator. I want that engine to, and go and vroom and take off.
Hmm.
And that's kind of the analogy here. That accelerator, when you step on the gas, you're pushing all of that fuel through. It's igniting. It's going. The engine loves it, and it runs. That to me is kind of what the thyroid gland is to your body. It allows your cells to receive the fuel, right? And
Yes,
take
yes.
off. But I joked. I think I told you this. My first car in high school was a Chevy Chevette.
Oh,
Anybody online know Chevy Chevettes? Remember those cars? Worst cars ever made. I,
oh
I literally
no.
think the engine was like a lawnmower engine. It was like the smallest little thing. And I remember like being at a stoplight and it goes green and I step on the throttle and instead of vroom, I get dun, 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 like,
Ugh,
and that to me is, yeah, that's the thyroid issues
yeah.
that we're dealing with. The engine wasn't getting the fuel that it needed. I don't know. That
Mhm.
that's how I think of it.
That's a good analogy, Dr. Mike. I'll give you two thumbs up for that.
Okay, you approve that one. She doesn't always approve my analogies.
Analogy approved.
Okay, so that gives us a good idea of what we're talking about. The thyroid gland's right here.
Hmm.
You really shouldn't see it. In some people, you can maybe see the little arms of it a little bit, but if it's prominent, go see your doctor because you probably really shouldn't see it that well. But
Right.
basically, it sits right here in your neck, and as Dr. Crystal said, it's your metabolic throttle. So, what we're going to do today, Robson, if you want to throw the slide up, we're going to talk about common thyroid symptoms, number one. And then we're
Hmm.
going to talk about causes of thyroid disorders. And then number two, nutritional support for your thyroid. So a lot to cover today. Let's get right into common symptoms. Now, of course, you can have a thyroid that's either high,
Overactive.
hyperthyroid,
Hmm.
normal, or low, what we call hypothyroidism. We're going to focus on the low part. hyper is pretty rare. So we're going to focus on the low part. Dr. Crystal, give us some idea of what somebody may be going through if their thyroid is a little low.
Yes, the list of symptoms are long. This list is long. Low energy, that's kind of classic low thyroid symptoms, but also difficulty concentrating, hair loss, dry skin, just kind of a poor or lethargic mood, elevated cholesterol.
Yep.
That's a sign. Um, Constipation. Did I mention that one? Constipation. Also, reproductive issues. And so the list goes on and on and on. And it all goes back to, I think, our initial conversation about, the function of the cell. And if cells aren't functioning properly, then it can manifest
Right.
in
Yeah.
many ways. And so you can see so many of these
There's
symptoms,
there's a
Dr.
lot of
Mike.
symptoms. A lot of
But
symptoms.
one thing that we talked about before, or we have talked about, is the fact that the symptoms often overlap with
Right.
other things or they can be missed. So if you present to your doctor with high cholesterol, he's probably going to treat your cholesterol, right?
And not worry about anything else.
Not worry about anything else. If you're
Yeah.
putting on a little weight, they're going to say, hey, you need to cut back.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're
Great
eating too
advice.
much. You
Cut
need to
back. Great advice.
exercise.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're dealing with hair loss, dry skin, you may go to the dermatologist. They may do a thyroid workup, but it's one of
Sometimes we
those things that it's often overlooked.
Yeah. Well,
So
it's
it's
the
important.
blinders. It's the blinders of clinical medicine, right? And it is something they do teach us to avoid. When I was in medical school, that was a very big thing. Is you got to sometimes take a step back first.
Really.
Yeah, no, they do, but it's also hard when you're seeing patient after patient after patient after patient, and there's a time frame for all that.
Hmm.
It's easy to put the blinders on, and I'm not making the excuse. We shouldn't do it, but it is easy to do that and say, oh, dry skin. Let's
Right.
fix the dry skin. Oh, weight gain. Let's fix. Oh, hair loss, constipation. I can fix that. And so you write up your treatment regimen and you go on to the next patient. But taking that step back may help some physicians to think, is there something overall driving all this?
Hmm.
And that's where I think we need to put thyroid issues at the front of our thought process as clinicians.
Right. So I think, with this isn't about testing, but I encourage all of you, your routine yearly checkup, if you're going twice a year, make sure your doctor's adding at least TSH
At
to
least,
those
yeah, yeah,
panels.
yeah.
That's a good starting point.
All right. All right. So a lot of different symptoms could be happening, and some people have all of them, and some people have maybe just one. I think when I was practicing in women, the most common was a depressed mood. I
Oh,
saw that often connected to low thyroid, and for men, believe it or not, it's constipation. Now, that was my experience. That was
uh-huh.
just kind of what I saw and what
Right.
I started associating things with. I don't have any paper to show you about that, but women, it was depression. Men, it was constipation.
Hmm.
Often, we found out that it was low thyroid. Here's
Oh,
something else to think about, Dr. Crystal. Let's use constipation as the example.
okay.
You're constipated. You go into your doctor's office. They prescribe something that should work pretty well. If it doesn't, that's where you should go back and say, can we take a step back and think about, is it really my gut issue or is it something else? Maybe right here,
That's
the
a good
thyroid.
point.
Yeah.
Good
See,
point, Dr. Mike.
once in a while, I've had a good analogy and a good point. I'm knocking it out of the park
You're
today.
on the roll.
I'm nailing it. All right. So, you wanted to talk a little bit about, and we wrote about this in the life extension protocol, right? About
Hmm.
temperature. Tell us about how maybe I think it's a weekly temperature reading, right?
Right. Well, it's actually 5 consecutive days in a row. If you have a temperature below 97.6 degrees for 5 consecutive days, it may, note I say may, it may indicate a sluggish thyroid, hypothyroidism. So if you are due for lab testing, for another few months and you just want to get a general idea, you may be listening and saying, hey, those symptoms sound familiar, just put your thermometer next to your bed, because you want your basal body temperature, meaning first thing in the morning before you get up,
Right,
before
you
you
get up.
start
Yeah.
moving, you wake up, grab your thermometer and check it 5 days in a row. And then again, the goal, or what we're looking for, is below 97.6 consecutively.
And again, it's not conclusive, right? That you have, but
Mhm.
but you could take that into your doctor now and say, I do have some constipation. I've gained some weight, and then hey, I have this temperature issue going on here.
Right.
Maybe I need a full thyroid panel, right? That would
Mhm.
be that'd be some good evidence for that. So what? Let's talk a little bit then about why the thyroid breaks down. Like why? Because hypothyroidism and even what we call subclinical hypothyroidism, meaning the labs look okay, but people have symptoms.
Mhm.
It's pretty prevalent in the United States,
Yes.
right?
And it's interesting as to why. We're going to get into some of
Well,
that
that's
and,
what
and
I
some of
want
the
to ask that.
theories.
Yeah, I want to ask that question. Why is it so prevalent? Because it's not, you can't, for a lot of the things you and I talk about, Dr. Crystal, one of our go to answers is, well, we're getting older because we talk a lot about age related issues, right?
Right,
But
right, right.
with low thyroid, that's not the case. There are a lot of men and women in their 30s and 40s dealing with these kind of symptoms. So what are some of the most common reasons that somebody would develop low thyroid?
Okay, so the top 3 things that's going on. The thyroid gland is either not making enough thyroid hormone. Number 2, you're not converting the thyroid hormones properly. So there are 2 things that can go awry. The thyroid primarily makes T4, which is kind of an inactive form of the thyroid hormone. That T4 has to convert to T3, which is the active hormone, right? So
Right.
maybe you're not properly converting that T4 to T3. And then the third thing is your T4 can also convert to reverse T3, which is an inactive form
Right.
of thyroid hormones. So those things are going on.
Well, let me
But
let me kind of let me just because that was a lot, right? And I want to make sure everybody gets this, right? So the gland here
mhm,
is mostly making T4,
correct.
right? Which is just a form. It's just a form of the thyroid that travels throughout the body, and at the tissue level, it's converted to T3, which is really the more active form. T3 is really the form that is doing most of the work, right?
Right. Correct.
But then there's a problem. Sometimes T3 can become inactive, and we call it reverse T3. So those are your main, you're not making enough here, you're not converting enough out in your tissue, and then some of that active T3 turns into this weird reversed form that doesn't work at all. So
Right.
that's, is that a good summary?
That's a great summary. So then the question is, the larger question is, why is that happening? And why are so many people dealing with thyroid issues? So there are 4 main reasons that I've just in research I've come up with. One are nutrient insufficiencies. So we're just not eating the foods that's going to give us, those building blocks, the iodine, insufficiencies.
Mhm.
We're not having enough of just that raw material. The second thing is stress. The stress, cortisol stress causes T4, that thyroid, the main one that the thyroid gland's making, can cause that T4 to turn into that inactive T3. So we're dealing with stress,
And
gut
most people,
issues,
most people are. Right.
right? Gut issues, and it with gut issues, it's kind of they're interrelated, meaning a sluggish thyroid or hypothyroid can lead to gut issues like constipation.
Right.
But then, the microbiome is also controlling the immune system, which relates to, I would say, the fourth reason, which is the immune system is overactive and it's attacking the thyroid.
Yeah.
We know that Hashimoto's is the most common hypothyroid disorder in the United States. So when we go all the way back to your original question, why, what is going on, Dr. Mike, I truly believe it's due to the Western diet, it's due to poor gut health, is due to all of these things that we're putting into our body that is disrupting the gut health and it's throwing our immune system off and it's causing us
Yeah.
to
Good.
have, to develop an overactive immune system that
Yeah.
is now attacking the thyroid.
You
What do
could
you
make
think?
the you could I like it. I think you're spot on. You could even I might go even a step further and say that because you had mentioned that between the gut and the thyroid, like what comes first, right?
Right.
You know, so low thyroid causes constipation. I think gut comes first. I think there are so many people with a chronic inflammatory process going on in their small and large bowel due to food sensitivities, stress. Right? We know
Yeah.
stress can affect the gut. And so and just the foods that we're eating, the processed stuff. So I think a lot of it may start there.
Dr. Mike, I agree.
Yeah, I think, and we're just talking and discussing. There's no one knows for sure, right? I mean, I think a lot more research has to happen, but there's so many gut disorders and so many people with dealing with gut issues, specifically inflammation, that I do think that could be what's driving then a lot of the thyroid issues. Just
I agree. And as you were saying that, the other thing I thought about is, the overprescribing of antibiotics, the fact that we
all
want
over the place.
we
Yeah,
want that for everything. Hey
yeah.
doc, I'm not going to be happy unless I leave out with the prescription.
Listen, that's well known. Hey, Dr. Crystal, in clinical medicine, we know that if somebody walks out of your office and you didn't do something to them or for them, they
Mhm.
don't like you and they don't come back.
Oh boy.
So doctors, even with just one little runny nose, oh, let me at least do this for you. Here's your prescription. And now
Right.
they feel like you did something. You heard them, and now they're happy. And that's what doctors do. The number of Z-Pack prescriptions filled out in this country every year, which is to fight bacterial infection, by the way.
Mhm.
But
Not viruses.
I think it's safe to say half of those prescriptions are useless because people were dealing with allergies or viruses. But all of that antibiotic, man, it goes right to the gut, kills out that microbiome, and now you're even more sensitive to the food and the processed stuff and the stress and all that. Yeah.
Right. So the question is, how do you get out of if if you are in a rut now and you're realizing, oh no,
What
you're
am I going to
talking to
do?
me.
Yeah. Well,
What do
break
I
it down for
do?
us, doctor. Like, take it through, like the nutritional insufficiencies. Like, take us through each one of those. What regimen would you set up for somebody?
So my first regimen is making sure people are eating real food. And it's I feel like a broken record sometimes. I know many of you who are on, thank you so much for joining. We're preaching to the choir, but we're hoping that you all are getting some of your friends to join in and listen who
Yeah.
really need to hear this information. Real food meaning as fresh as you can get it and as close to that food can be to the natural state, so that you're going to get lots of the trace minerals that's needed to support thyroid health, and also eating a variety of foods. So we'll start with iodine. We know when we talk about T4 and
Mhm.
T3, those 4 and 3, that represents the iodine that's attached to the amino acid tyrosine.
Right.
So, building blocks of thyroid hormones, these are nutritional components in things that food that we eat every day. Iodine,
Well, but Dr.
tyrosine.
Crystal, what about iodine's a big issue because most of the iodine comes from sea plants,
Yes,
seaweed. And
yes.
by the way, we shouldn't call it seaweed. We only call it seaweed because we like to swim in clear water in the oceans, and they get in our. That's why we call them sea. I grew up in Southern California. That's why they call it seaweed, because it's in the way. Get out of the way, right? It's not.
Right.
These are sea plants that are powerful health promoting food sources that we don't eat in this country at all.
We're not eating it, and we're not eating, obviously there are issues with eating tons of seafood every day because our water supply now is
It's a little
that's like a
crazy.
whole nother, that's a loaded issue,
Yeah.
right? For
Yeah.
another talk. But we're not eating the seafood. If you are a vegan or a vegetarian, where you're getting your iodine, the iodized salt, we know is just not doing it. People are limiting salt, but even if you buy iodized salt, that
It's
iodine,
mm,
it's gone. It like dissipates in about 4 weeks.
yeah. It's not. You're not
Um,
getting much at all. Yeah.
you're not getting much, so that's something to consider. Is maybe you need to look at foods with iodine. Are you getting those foods? Should you add them in? So that's the building block to support the production of those hormones with the thyroid. The next is those conversions, Dr. Mike.
Right.
What's needed for
T4
the
to T3.
conversion?
Yeah.
um, Selenium, one of the number one nutrients, that mineral is
So important.
is needed for the conversion of T4 to T3. Zinc is needed for the conversion of T4 to T3. Um, Iron, believe it or not. So if someone is dealing with iron deficiency, so if you know you have anemia, then it's likely that your thyroid is also suffering because of the inadequate conversion. So
Yeah.
we need to activate those
So
thyroid
yeah, and
hormones.
now some people may be thinking, well, how do I know if? So I'm having some symptoms. How do I know if I'm a conversion issue person? Well, that's where testing does come in. And as we said, we've talked about testing a lot. But basically, your T4 levels might be high, but then your T3 levels are way too low based on those T4 levels, and that's how a doctor may look at that and say, all right, maybe there's a conversion issue. So
Yeah,
testing is how you would tease that out.
right.
Yeah.
The next thing is the stress aspect. We know stress management. We've had tons of lives all about managing stress, tips, everyday lifestyle strategies to help you to manage stress. So, what can you take?
Yeah.
What nutrients help to support stress? I'm a big fan of adaptogenic herbs, Dr.
Of course.
Mike.
Yep. Yep. We talk about them a lot, and we should.
Yes, we do. I love lemon balm. One that we do have good research, ashwagandha.
Of course.
And there's actually research with ashwagandha stress, but also with thyroid.
Yeah.
Ashwagandha can help with the production of thyroid hormones, as well as preventing that thyroid hormone from turning into inactive thyroid hormone, or that reverse T3. And
Yeah.
I wrote a study here that I wanted to share. In one randomized control trial, this was 50 subjects with high TSH levels. So,
Now
do
that's
you want to explain what that means,
yeah.
Dr.
So
Mike?
so TSH is the hormone that comes from the brain and tells the thyroid to make thyroid. So if you have low levels, the TSH level goes up because the brain is trying to get the thyroid to turn on. So it's throwing out more and more and more TSH. So the high TSH is an indication that your thyroid is not responding to that stimulus and you're not making the T4.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Mike. So, in this study, they had the high TSH, which indicated a low functioning thyroid, 600 milligrams of ashwagandha for 8 weeks. So, there was the placebo group as well. Those in the treatment group that received the 600 milligrams of ashwagandha experienced normalized thyroid uh,
Pretty good.
labs,
Yeah.
including T3, T4, and TSH levels. So we know, we have research that ashwagandha can be beneficial for thyroid health.
I think it also is again. I think this really sheds the light on how detrimental chronic stress can be in our lives, right? I mean, you have this great study showing some great results from adaptogenic herb. But this herb ultimately is treating stress. That's what it's, and so that tells you, yeah, listen, high levels of cortisol throughout the day, chronic stress throughout your day, it's not good. It affects so many body parts.
Right. So, and like we mentioned, there is just no one way to help you manage stress, and it's something that you have to find the strategies. It's an
Yeah.
individualized approach, and find a way to help to manage it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So that's ashwagandha. You also talk about ginseng with
Yes,
thyroid
we
issues,
know
right?
that ginseng can be helpful in research. Ginseng was beneficial for individuals who had like cold hands and cold feet. That is something that people with hypothyroidism often experience, just the sensitivity
Yeah,
to
yeah,
cold and temperature. So we
yeah.
know that's helping to do that, as well as decreasing reverse T3,
Right,
which is
which is
that
that weird
inactive thyroid.
inactive form that you don't want reverse T3. That's the story is you want T3. That's the active form. That reverse T3 is just an unruly little guy in there that's not going to do you any good. That really is a production of stress. So he's a whacked out, stressed out T3. That's the way to think of it. Now, here's what we do. Now, gut health is important too. So on the count of three, I want you, and I'm gonna do it too. So on the count of
Okay.
three, we're going to shout out our number one suggestion for starting with gut health. And I don't know what you're. I have no idea what she's gonna say. I have no idea.
I'm so nervous.
If you're watching, you want to join in on three. Type in real fast, like what you think. So ready? One, two, three. Probiotic.
Probiotics.
You were behind me. You cheated. You waited. You waited. That's like no. That's like playing that what the hand thing, and you waited till you saw. She cheated.
I had my mouth was ready for the P. If
Probiotic.
you all scroll,
Yeah.
scroll back, you'll see.
Yeah, everybody, probiotics, big. I mean, we've done so many shows on probiotics, and we're going to do several more.
Yes.
Right? Very important to create that healthy microbiome balance. And it's not just really about the balance thing too. It's those healthy bacteria. They metabolize food sources that you eat in ways that are beneficial for you, that heal the gut, that improve neurotransmitters. Even it's quite fascinating what a healthy microbiome can do for you. You also though would like to add vitamin D, right?
Of course, you can't talk about thyroid and not talk about vitamin D, especially in the United States, with Hashimoto's being the most common cause. Hashimoto's, again, that's the autoimmune thyroid condition. And so you have to think about your vitamin D status.
For sure. Yeah,
Check
yeah.
your levels,
Yeah.
typical
It, yeah, and
typical
it's safe.
amount. Yeah,
It's safe too because a lot of people with autoimmune disorders they're very cautious about taking immune boosting supplements, and they should be.
yes,
And Life Extension can help you with that. Call our wellness specialist. They'll go through a lot of the research for you and find the nutrients that are okay with autoimmune disorders. And overall, vitamin D3 is fine. Vitamin D3 is the one you want to take, right?
yes.
That's been shown to help at least reduce some of the impact of an autoimmune disorder. That was a lot of great inflammation, right? So let's see if I can remember it. Iodine is key, right?
Hmm.
And unless you're going to eat a lot of seaweed, probably need to find a supplement form of that if that's something you're dealing with, right? You would agree.
Yes,
Tyrosine, the amino acid, your body makes that. So
yes.
we don't usually suggest tyrosine supplementation, but I do think it's out there if you felt like you needed to do that. And just cleaner food, right? I liked what you said about real food. Think of it this way: real food doesn't come in boxes.
Very
Real
true.
food doesn't need an ingredient list of 80 things. It just
Mm-mm.
right. I mean, real food is broccoli. I mean, it's just broccoli.
Yes,
There's nothing else. So think about that too when you're looking at food choices. Box versus an apple. It can be that simple. Definitely reduce the stress. Ashwagandha is important. Improve the gut health, probiotics, vitamin D, a lot of great inflammation. But if somebody were to do all of this, right? Somebody can do all of this and still not have the best response because we're all different individuals when it comes to supplementation. So sometimes you may just need a prescription. And here's the thing. Dr. Crystal and I, Life Extension, we are not against conventional medicine in any way, shape, or form. We are
absolutely.
for whatever is best for you,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Right.
listen, Dr. Crystal, you would agree with this, right? You can't live without thyroid. So if you're struggling and you're trying all the natural things and they're just not quite working, please talk to your doctor and get on a prescription. But there are some maybe better options with
Right.
prescriptions, right? Dr. Crystal, you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so you have most of your prescriptions. Well, most people are familiar with Synthroid, which is T4 or levothyroxine. If it's a generic, that's T4. Now, your T4 still has to convert to T3, remember. So, those you still need to support yourself from a nutritional perspective. If you find that your T4 prescription is just not working, you still feel sluggish, you're still having symptoms, talk to your doctor about maybe adding in some T3.
Mm-hmm.
Doctors are a little hesitant about T3 because it can be very stimulating. It's, we're giving you that active thyroid hormone, but based on testing, some doctors are open to that. And then there is also the the I wouldn't say the compounded
Yeah.
thyroid hormone. So this is coming from a dried porcine thyroid gland. And some people do very well with those. That's like your Armor, your Westroid, Nature Throid. Those
And these options are providing more of the T4 T3 combo in general, right?
Right.
Yeah.
T4, T3, and even some other components that the thyroid gland makes, like calcitonin, which is supporting calcium balance in the body. So you're getting a more well-rounded thyroid hormone replacement.
Yeah.
So those are some options. Again, it's an individualized approach. Figure out if it's based on symptoms as well.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. If you start anything, whether it's natural or a prescription, and your symptoms aren't getting any better, you got to go back to your doctor. You got to really then look at what was prescribed, what the regimen was, and make some adjustments and do some good testing. See where maybe is reverse T3 too high, or you're not making enough T3. Identify that, and that's going to help you develop a thyroid regimen that's going to be best for you and help you to reach optimal levels to feel better at the end of the day, right? Hey,
That's
we got
right.
a great protocol on this. Let's see. You go to lifeextension.com/thyroid.
That's easy.
Highly vetted, copiously referenced protocol by Life Extension goes into a lot more detail of everything we just talked about today. That's lifeextension.com/thyroid. Dr. Crystal, great job. This was a wonderful, wonderful topic.
I agree, Dr. Mike. Thank you.
I want to thank everybody for watching us today. Don't forget, we go live 3 p.m. every Wednesday. Like, share, comment, join into the discussion. We would love to hear maybe even some topics
Yes.
you'd like us to cover, right? So please interact with our social team. We really enjoy that. I'm Dr. Mike. Thanks for watching.